question?
Sure.
How pronounce it?
Co tutaj, żeby na mnie zasnęli? No, nie wiem, czy poproszę może... Oni mogą oni włączyć, czy pisać za kogoś? Dobra.
Hi, very good morning. Dzień dobry. Hello. Okay, guys, we a little bit start because this session is about the investments, and we know about time value of money. We know time, we know value, and we know money. So we start from here. The doors will be closed. I would like to also thank very much the organizers. Many thanks for organizing this conference. Also many thanks for the Polish side, for the Polish presidency. We start with a presentation of a panel. The panel will be very easy. We make it the most of it. We keep the timing as much as possible. It will be not only about the investment in terms of money, it will be also investment in the human capital.
Jimena Vázquez is also going to be with us this morning. She is the project finance lawyer at White & Case Nuclear Group, and she has been also very involved with advocacy for nuclear. She participates in INLA, International Nuclear Law Association, and she has been managing different working groups in this field. Andrei Goichea, Policy Director at Nuclear Europe. Before the Policy Division Officer, he was working at Mochove Units 3 and 4 project in Slovakia. And from his current position, he is dealing with the European policy matters with impact on the nuclear sector. Last but not least, as our invited panelist, we have Mrs. Cornelia Kauspitz. Is a dedicated communication specialist at Orlen, where she has been instrumental for the past 2 years in driving corporate communications and stakeholder engagement. Final, but not less important, my colleague here, Michael Tratowski, ECDG RTD, Euratom Policy Officer. He's going to be my co-moderator today, and he's going to guide our distinguished panelists through the ins and outs of risk and financing nuclear projects.
I think we can start. We're a little sensitive to time and try to not press too much. And maybe we start with the Minister, Mr. Rafna, who will be happy to guide us from the concept of pioneering investment in financial models in Poland, how Poland is unique, how it compares to the others, and what is great about Poland. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, especially in this particular panel, because we were discussing during different conferences in different formats, at the political level as well, the sort of what we're calling the revival of the nuclear in Europe and in the world. And it's a very right moment, and I think it's a good direction because, first of all, with the very challenging climate targets, with the very challenging energy and climate transition, Nuclear, it seems more and more obvious, is the must in our energy mix. And I'm not speaking about Poland. Poland, we're going to discuss in a short. But I'm speaking about Europe, and I'm speaking globally. For a very long time, especially in Europe, we have been focusing very much on the deployment of renewables, on our climate targets. I have the impression that for a certain period of time we have been not focusing enough on how the energy transition is impacting our industry. And it's not the right time to judge whether we were too naive or too optimistic, but the thing is that nowadays we are discussing much more nuclear as a right tool to decarbonize our economies and as a right tool to make European and world economy competitive. But because for a very long time, we, especially here in Europe, we have been focusing on renewables and on climate targets, and nuclear, we have seen it very clearly, was not the solution that was supported by many. We are currently facing many challenges, and because, as I said, we're discussing the revival of the nuclear, and there are many projects being discussed at different stages. We need to think about one important thing, and as I have started this short presentation, without a serious discussion about how to finance, we will never succeed. So we can have great objectives. We can have great plans about building new nuclear, about facilitating the permitting process, including new technologies, small modular reactors, but without financing, and to the very large extent, if we want to succeed in large scale, in deploying nuclear on a large scale, we need to also include private money. And what's the challenge then? Poland is in a very particular situation because a part of having a will of deploying nuclear in Poland, a part of the research reactor we're having in Poland, we do not have commercially operating power plants. And it has two very direct consequences. I mean, first of all, we don't have sites where we have existing nuclear facilities where we can put another 2 or 3 units, making use of the infrastructure that was previously developed. And it has many different consequences, because it's much easier to put another 2 units to the existing power plants than developing a greenfield project, because the costs are higher, the planning is much more complex. And it has huge impact on financing, so this is first. The second, we do not have experienced regulator, we do not have proven capacities in licensing and in delivering nuclear power plant. And if we go to the market and we discuss with potential utilities, operators, investors, lenders, how to finance, our situation is even slightly more difficult than in the other member states. And I think that the situation in Europe is even more difficult than in other parts of the world, because of the very particular design of the European energy markets, that remain very competitive and that are focusing on free competition and exchange of trade, including trade in electricity between the member states, and with a very dynamic changing of the regulatory framework. When we discuss investment in nuclear, we are speaking about 15, 20 years of preparation, of pre-development, development, including the construction time, and another 60 years of operation, at least, in a very uncertain environment. Taking this into account, it's obvious that we're not going to find a private capital that would come into such project, because the risk, it's not even that they're too high. We are enabled to assess them. So that's a previous, I mean, that's a clear answer that it's extremely difficult that without state support, such projects cannot happen. Of course, public money can be, or in a European situation, by saying public money, I define it also, or I encompass in this definition EU money, can be a great tool to help, especially the development, pre-development, simply to decrease the costs. But if we take as example many different EU funds that are available for the investors, including the investors in the energy sector, we can have a look at the following programs. We have the Innovation Fund, which is the EU tool to finance the economy with a budget of 38 billion euros. But nuclear is not listed there as an eligible technology. We have Modernization Fund, the allocation 57 billion euros. Nuclear is not literally listed, potentially can have access to some limited funds as a non-prioritary investment. We have Horizon Europe, almost 100 billion euros. I mean, there is no formal exclusion, but nuclear is not a sector that is invited to participate. We have Cohesion Fund for Poland. The allocation is 36 billions, nuclear excluded. We have European Regional Development Fund for Poland is 313 billion euros, nuclear excluded. Just Transition Fund, Invest EU, nuclear excluded. Another 100 of billions of euros that are not, where nuclear is not eligible. I could probably speak much more about this, but we clearly see that it's almost not possible to find the EU fund where nuclear can get money. Of course, it's a political decision. And I believe that we are in a situation where now we can change it. I've started for purpose discussing that for many years we have been at the EU level focusing on renewables because it has the very clear impact on financing and on the policies. So here in Poland we had no choice than finance it from the state budget. The Polish program of the construction of the first Polish nuclear power plant, as you probably all know, construction of 3 AP1000 units north of Poland, will be financed in a model that 30% of the financing would go through equity, 70% as a loans, and this 30%, which in real figures equals to 15 billion euros, would go directly from the state budget as the capital injection into the SPV, the investor in the first Polish nuclear power plant. The government has presented a bill in January this year, if I'm remembering the dates correctly. Now this bill was voted and came into law, and this 15 billion euros is secured. So we have money to develop this project. And I believe that because, the risk of the nuclear project, especially at this stage of, as we say, the revival of nuclear, are still very high, it won't be possible to finance it through private money, and especially if we are talking about very capital-intensive large-scale nuclear. It could be different for SMRs. I'm going to develop later on. But the first and the large nuclears should be financed through public money. And in addition, with guaranteeing in the future the operating income of the NPP. Again, European law here sets a very strict rules. We can finance this nuclear through the contract for difference, which basically is a right tool to finance. But we can have a separate discussion whether for nuclear it's the best one. I would like to have a discussion about the regulated asset-based model at the EU level. As of now, it's excluded, but I hope that while we speak with all the stakeholders, including the European Commission, on the real development and speeding up the process of development, that the other models could be also included, because there's one very important feature that we take into account. Nuclear has the best economic performance when it operates as a base load. The specificity of the European energy markets does not necessarily allow the nuclear, and especially if we take the state aid scheme, which is, as I said, necessary for the development of nuclear, as example, because the Commission, and we have seen it very clearly when we take the decision that was published for the Dukovany case, Commission, and I believe, at least in the legal framework as we have now, has a right justification to do so, is trying to make nuclear operate in a model when it's following the market price signals, especially on the shorter markets and with the marginal cost type of the market we're currently having. We know all that renewable with the zero marginal cost will have advantages.
I'm really sorry to interrupt, but we have to get the closure in the next minute or so.
Yes.
Because if not, we are going to run out of time.
Okay, thank you for that. So very briefly about SMRs. A part of the large scale, we're investing here in Poland in the small modular reactors. I believe it's a technology that, because I'm also trying to speed up my, because of a smaller capex, lower capex, at certain point in time, we can see private capital also being interested in investing, But again, we need to create, at least at this stage, incentives and umbrellas that will guarantee these projects to be developed. And I believe that at certain point in time, especially when it comes to the SMRs being less capital intensive per unit, we can see a private capital coming in, but this will not happen earlier that we demonstrate to the market that we can build at least several SMRs in time and in budget. So without that, the private money will not appear. So that's the why huge role for the government to invest. And from the Polish perspective, as we are willing to have nuclear, and we want to have nuclear also at the EU level, huge work to be done in order to allow also the EU funds to be released for nuclear. We need to make nuclear being eligible for EU funding again. Very important task, and within nuclear like-minded countries at the EU level, we have already started this work, and I believe that in coming months we can deliver something that is very tangible to allow nuclear to finally get the EU funds. So this is for the introduction, and I'm looking forward for the interesting discussion.
Thank you very much. It has been extremely interesting to hear your opinion on public funding. If you are willing to move next, I think we will continue with Michel. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you to the organizer for putting together a very good conference. Only seen today, but I've a lot of good things about the discussion the last couple of days, and of course, thank you for a Polish host today. So, Minister, so you're in the driving seat, in the hard work of delivering a nuclear new build for your country. I'm only sitting on the sideline, making observations about financing. But indulge me with making a couple of points which hopefully will be useful for today's discussion around, first, how did we get to where we are today when it comes to financing nuclear new build in Europe? And then moving forward, how should we start to think about financing more systematically, and what policymakers should pay attention when it comes to designing effective frameworks for financing nuclear new build, be it large-scale power plants or SMR. And starting with how do we get to where we are today, it's essentially a journey that started 20, 30 years ago at a time where people thought that the economic textbook, training in economics, and as a student in the economic textbook, we were told that divesting and deregulating electricity market were the way to go. That will derive the right outcomes, that will also spur the necessary investments needed on the electricity market. And for a long period of time, maybe 23 years, people accepted that as the way to go and as the right approach. And I think we only slowly and painfully realizing that this toolbox, this framework we had to think about the electricity market was flawed on many levels. And this has, of course, very significant implications for how do we think about competition on this market, and how we think about the role of governments and the rationale for state interventions at this point in time for investment in nuclear market. And the reason why this idea of fully liberalized electricity market didn't work is that essentially we thought that electricity was a commodity, like you would be trading coffee or any goods or services. And as we all know here, electricity has very specific properties. It is not storable, and so it doesn't quite work like that. We failed to really appreciate that the attributes that nuclear power plants and other low carbon technology brings in terms of CO2 emission avoidance, in terms of security of energy supply, but also more broadly speaking in terms as a strategic infrastructure that spurs economic progress will not be valued, will not be reflected by electricity markets. And if private actors are not going to value those attributes, then it means that there is a role for policy intervention through regulation, but also through financial support to address these gaps in the market. And the observation I would make is that whilst we are slowly recognizing this state of play, we are essentially adding patches to the existing framework, trying to sort it somehow. And we think that by adding CFDs there and the PPEs there, is going to solve it and market will deliver the outcomes. And I think this is still too narrow view of the situation, and we probably need to expand our framework to think more broadly about how to go forward on this front. And I'm not saying that nuclear power plants should be financed on government balance sheet forever after, but we are certainly at the point in time where there is a clear rationale for much stronger intervention by government. Having said that, one thing we've done at the NEA over the last couple of years was to survey what has been done and what has been tried and tested in terms of financing framework for new nuclear in NEA member countries, which broadly align with the OECD and certainly is inclusive of all the European countries that are looking at investment in new nuclear. So the report is called Effective Frameworks for Financing Nuclear New Build. You will find it on our website. I do apologize for not bringing a couple of copies with me today. But there's a couple of key takeaways from this publication where I think is useful for today's discussion. So to be concrete, first, when we think about financing, we are talking first primarily about risk and who should bear the risk. And here, going back to my earlier point, there is a recognition that when it comes to electricity market risk, some degree of intervention, being through CFD or PPA or something else, is needed. And it seems to me that on that front, we are heading in the right direction. But in addition, there are also, the bulk of the risk as you're going to invest in a nuclear power plant. At this point in time, given technology that have been deployed in NEA countries for the last 20 years, is going to be around construction risk. Is still going to be, to this day, the cost of building first of a kind. Strikes me, we build many first of a kind, but that's a separate point. And there is one observation to make is that it's going to be about finding the right balance between the different stakeholders involved in the project, between the ability to absorb the risk, take the risk, and there is really a role for the government, but also the ability to mitigate the risk, having incentives in the project. And so that's one area where discussion around the RAM model are very important, because this is an area where the RAM models goes into great detail to really keep incentives on the project component, whilst recognizing that there's a point where an EPC company, a vendor, will have limited ability to absorb this risk, which then brings the role of government as either as a backstop or directly as an investor in the project. My second observation is when we talk about financing, we of course at this point in time primarily focus on the so-called final investment decision. But there is a whole project life cycle. And nuclear financing is not static across the sources of financing are not going to be static across the project life cycle. There was some very good work done by Polish colleagues on this few years ago. But what we do see is, the point that comes forward very clearly is that whilst the risk profile for nuclear power plants leads to very strong involvement of government at this point in time during the phase of construction, once the nuclear power plants become operational, the risk profile changes dramatically. And there is really certainly a lot of opportunities to bring some sources of private finance, both on the debt and on the equity front. And that does mean that if you're like my colleague on the right, putting 15 billion of equity into a nuclear new build project, maybe once that plant will be operational, that doesn't mean that this has to stay on the state balance sheet forever after. This is not a direct policy recommendation, but this is just an illustrative example. And that does have an implication for the government that operates with, of course, finance taxpayer money, and has to think about how best to allocate these limited resources over time. Financing is also not static across the technology spectrum, and whilst a lot of what I've said so far is mostly relevant for first of a kind project, everything that we're doing at this point in time, and in particular with our momentum across OECD countries toward new nuclear, should get us to a point where at some point we stop building first of a kind project, and should lead us to a point where at some point we start serial construction of nuclear power plants, be it large scale or SMR. And at that point in time, the risk profile is also going to be different. At that point in time, one should expect that private finances, again, both on the equity and the debt front, should look at nuclear power plant through a different lens, and might be much more willing to take some of the financing. So it doesn't mean they will take part of the risk. No, this is not the same thing, but might be willing to put much more money on the table. I will just finish with maybe a few key takeaways, and what we would do at the OECD is bread as butter is very much advice to policymakers. So I've made a few direct comments on the Polish situation. I'll start by saying that, of course, one thing it's important to recognize as we think about financing framework is that each financing framework is going to, at the end of the day, be grounded in the national and industrial context. And so whilst the RAB has a lot of merit, and we should think about the RAB model in our policy toolkit, the RAB model is something we can consider in the UK at this point in time because there's a lot of regulatory experience with it. This is how a lot of the infrastructure being financed in the UK. And so we won't be able to translate that one for one to a different country. There will need to be some adaptation, there will need to be some consideration about the way the electricity market is structured in that country, the way the role of potential of the utilities, and so on. So it's very important not to scan all the different approaches that are out there, but then really take some time to think about how they're going to be translated to your national and industrial context. My second kind of advice to policymaker point is on thinking about financing is a lot about, as we think about financing, and if you're developing a new build project, you should think about financing as an outcome, not an output, not an input. And what I'm trying to say here is that sometimes financing fail. Might not be because there is a problem with financing framework per se, but maybe there are some more structural problems with the way the project has been structured that leads to changes with financing down the road. So the discussion about financing is completely connected to the discussion about how what makes a good new build project. Essentially, that's my point. Which then, small side note, is the opportunity for me to share that we at the NEA will be hosting a conference on this very specific topic, how to bring excellence in nuclear new build construction in London on June 18 and 19. So this was my 30 seconds of personal advertisement. But just to say that the two conversations are not happening in silo, and we need really to think about them together. And last but not least, my last advice to policymakers is that at the end of the day, as you put together your financing framework, it is going to be about how you align stakeholders' interest. And whilst, my friend from the left, who is a lawyer, is going to spend a lot of time writing contracts, not everything is going to be written in contract at the end of the day. At the end of the day, it's going to be about relationship, it's going to be about trust, it's going to be about leadership, and all of those are very essential ingredients if you want to be successful in moving forward with financing nuclear new build. So with that note, I stop there and hand it to my lawyer on the left.
Thank you very much for your excellent input on financing. It has been really interesting. And now we can wait to hear Mrs. Jimena. Do you need it? Well, the floor is yours.
Michel is a gentleman. He got me his. Thank you. So good morning, everybody. So yes, I'm the lawyer. So I'm providing here the project finance perspective, meaning that I've been in discussions with all the different stakeholders, including the banks, commercial banks, financial institutions. I have the pleasure of chairing a group of the World Nuclear Association regarding small modular reactors to decarbonize the industry, where we discuss about financing. And also, Andre will certainly talk much more about it, but in the European Industrial Alliance for SMRs, I'm part of the group on financing and co-lead of one of the drafting groups with regard to the challenges of financing. Yes, there are challenges in financing nuclear. But good news for everybody, the commercial banks are very interested in nuclear, especially here in Europe. But one thing that I always say is when we say financing nuclear, financing what? I mean, there are different things in nuclear. I will start with the first thing before getting into the reactors, which is financing the supply chain. Because without the supply chain, we cannot have projects. And I'm trying to inform the banks about also the possibility of financing the supply chain. And maybe for them, there is less risk in supplying, the other parts of the fuel cycle, which is not operation of reactors, but we need to have the money in order to be able to develop projects. So now here is, let's say, the chicken and the egg thing is that they're very interested, but they say, show us the projects. We need to have projects in order to be able to finance. And so we definitely need to go forward and to ensure and to let them know that the governments and the industries are committed, in fact, to develop these projects. But well, that will be maybe the topic for another panel about the fuel cycle. But with regard also to reactors, again, sorry, what are we talking about? Because you have large nuclear power plants, which has been the ones that have been financed until now. So we have had different options. It's true that the NEA report that summarizes the different financial schemes that have been used until now is very interesting and can give you some food for thought. But then we're in a new world, talking about innovation. So we're innovating technically, as you all know, with the small modular reactors, but you have a range of them. So do you have the big small modular reactors, which could be comparable, in fact, to a reactor that is currently in operation. So we would be confronted with similar risks as for large nuclear power plants, with the construction risk, which is one of the most important. When we talk to banks, of course, the first thing that they will tell you is like, oh my God, have you seen the latest projects? They're completely over time and over budget. And I have to say, yes, well, don't focus on the bad ones, focus on the good ones, because there have been, good projects lately that have been developed in a pretty good manner in time and budget. It's just that in the Western world, we need to restart building. And once we will start building again, then we will get all these projects to be more on time and on budget. Look at France, when they started building the whole program in the 70s after the oil crisis. I mean, they were building, we say in French, you know, these reactors as mushrooms, you know, they were, so it's the thing to start. But definitely, okay, the lawyers got involved, the legal framework is a little bit more complicated than in the 70s, but that legal framework, I know that everybody considers it a nightmare, but it's important because it is what has been able to have nuclear operating for 70 years with a pretty good track record. I mean, that's the thing. People don't realize it, but in 70 years, and so that's also the message I'm trying to pass to the banks. You know, it's like, listen, yes, it's dangerous, we know, so that's why we have this legal framework. That's why we have been operating 70 years in such a good manner. And no, the consequences of the actions are not what you think. You should read the UNSCEAR reports and the IAEA reports to know exactly what the consequences were. And so there is a lot of communication to be done with that regard, because it's true that people, when you say nuclear, they get afraid. So construction, yes, so that workshop on new build and construction, it will be extremely important because we need to know what innovation we're bringing to the construction phase in order to ensure that it's going to be more in time and in budget. But then you have the SMRs that are getting smaller and smaller and smaller until the microreactors. So I will not speak to each of them, but each of them will have a different financing. Definitely, it will be on a case-by-case basis. But when we get to the microreactors are going to be completely manufactured in a factory and brought on site. There's no construction. There's going to be installation with regard to those reactors. So the risk is going to be very different. Then afterwards, okay, so we're talking about the large, but then financing what again? So is your project going to be on-grid or off-grid project? If it's going to be an on-grid project, yes, you can look at former financial schemes. Everybody's looking at contract for difference plus PPAs. That could be an approach. Mancala, why not? If you have an industrial group, you know, who wants to have their energy from a small modular reactor, could be an interesting approach. But then if you're off-grid, that's completely different. And that's where the banks, you know, now they're listening to all this big tech interested in energy and wanted to get it from small modular reactors. Of course, I mean, from a creditworthiness perspective, when you have a Microsoft or a Google who is going to buy energy from a small modular reactor, the banks are going to say, we have a good client there. I mean, the end user will definitely be able to pay, which could be very different if it's another type of industry who will be the end user. So here, the creditworthiness, in fact, of the end user will be very important. So, I mean, I can go on differences about financing what. So that's, I know that usually people don't like it because they think it's good to have like a one-fits-all approach, but we will not be able to have that with the new technologies. And so we will need to be innovating also financially and contractually. And when talking about financing, we definitely need to reach out to the banks because we need to understand each other. I mean, when I say, here I'm talking as a nuclear, because they need to understand the nuclear world. We have our language, our risk allocation, and our understanding of the risks. And the nuclear world needs to understand the bank's requirements, you know, what they need in order to have approval from the credit board, you know. And definitely with regard to the specificity of nuclear, there are certain financing mechanisms that they're very used to that will not be able to use or will have to innovate. I mean, one of them, for those who may be familiar with it, is, for example, the step-in rights. Usually in the financing, when you're drafting your contracts, as you were saying, you have a step-in right, meaning that when the bank sees that the project is not well managed and is not going to be able to pay back the loan, they just change the operator of the installation. Well, that's not going to be possible in the nuclear sector. I mean, you'll have to talk with the Nuclear Safety Authority, and it's not as if you can change one operator by another. I mean, we don't have so many, especially in one country. So there are things like that that needs to be taken into consideration. The structuring of the project is going to be very important, because of course banks will need to be repaid. So who is going to be the borrower? Is it going to be the operator? But the operator has the nuclear liability. So even though it has insurance to cover it, it's in fact the entity within the structure of a nuclear project that bears the most important liabilities. And so are you going to structure it differently with the reactor being owned by a different entity than the operator? That exists. In Europe, it also exists. So there is a whole structuring of the project that you have to think about from the beginning. So that is what is really, I think, super interesting. I'm very passionate about this topic because you need to look at your project specifically. Because also, I mean, I was saying, okay, are you off-grid, on-grid? But if you're buying heat, you're not going to be on-grid, definitely. That's going to be off-grid. Then also countries will have to think about, of course, their energy mix, but I would say their nuclear mix also. How much are they going to get from their large reactors and how much are they going to get from small reactors? Because there's going to be the grid capacity too. I mean, if there is a problem with the small modular reactors and when providing electricity, I mean, imagine data centers. I mean, we're all talking about data centers, AI, and that's a big thing. Or Bitcoins also. I mean, we forget about that, but there is that economy too. They cannot have 1 second without electricity. So if you have a problem with your reactor, you have to have a backup. So even if you're off-grid, you might need to be on grid at a certain time. So you have to speak with the grid. And you have to see how you're going to... So there's so many questions. I mean, it's so fascinating, isn't it? So as I say always, especially to the banks, is that, guys, I mean, we have until 2032 to come up with a plan so that everybody understands exactly what nuclear means, what is a nuclear project, depending on the reactor, and how we should address each type of projects. So we have, what, 2025? 5 years before us, you know, things take time. So it's important that we start discussing about it and that we start coming up with solutions with regard to the financing. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jimena. It has been super interesting. Personally, I have not think about all of these questions that you've presented, but I will think about them, that for sure. And we are going to continue with our next panelist. Please, Andre, the floor is yours.
Yep. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if I have many things to say after what's been said. And we have a lot of questions from Ximena, right? Well, first of all, I would like to say something about the organization that I'm representing. Nuclear Europe is the trade association for the nuclear industry at the European level. And I would like here to mention, so we had some figures for Poland from the minister. But we are talking, when we are talking about EU, we are thinking towards 2050 to reach 150 gigawatt of nuclear. We have currently around 100. So having those figures in mind, we are going and trying to overcome the different important aspects that will help us to reach the targets. And first of all, we are talking about another very big campaign of new build. So in order to have 150 gigawatt in 2050, many reactors that are existing today will be shut down, so we will have a lot of new build, around 150 or over 150 gigawatt new build. I'm talking here about large reactors, but also small modular reactors. And I will not go into details about the financing of the new build. I will focus more about the financing of the innovation, because it's very, very important. And innovation is not only for the new build. Research, development, innovation is not only for new build, but it's also for the lifetime extension of the existing fleet, a lot. So a lot of things have to be done in order to get to this ambitious target that we are looking for. And I have to admit that we are rather conservative comparing with other technologies which are thinking about tripling 10 times more capacity. So we are going from 100 gigawatt to 150. And there are three very big challenges in order to reach those targets. And coming from the industry, and they were already mentioned somehow: supply chain, skills, and financing. All of them are very much interconnected. Nuclear Europe we had, because as I said, we are trying to work on these three main challenges. We had recently a position paper, and where we are recommending or proposing changes, for example, in the funds that were mentioned by the minister, that are not including currently nuclear, so some of them should be revised in order to consider it. But I think that going a little bit further, I think that we have to have visibility, and for this we have to have technology neutral approach policy in general, and I'm not talking only about financing, about different other policies. Multi-annual financial framework is coming at EU level, and definitely it's important to consider nuclear. And when we are talking about innovation, I think that it's very important to have, maybe to increase the Euratom budget. And to increase it, and also to revise the share of the budget that is allocated to the fission, because as I said, a lot of innovation and research is needed. Ximena already spoiled a little bit the surprise about the European Industrial Alliance on SMRs. Again, financing, one of the 8 topics that is covered by this alliance. Some of you are members of this alliance. And in the financing technical working group, there is this drafting team that is looking at the challenges, but there is another drafting team that I think it should be mentioned, that is analyzing the current financial landscape for the deployment of SMRs in EU. So it's making a mapping. And I think that this analysis is very, very relevant also for live reactors, so it's not only for SMRs. And there are some, I will not go into details about what was already, let's say, identified or we were looking at. It was already mentioned: Horizon Europe, Euratom Research and Training, European Innovation Council, which it can support right now. Also SMRs are included. Net Zero Industry Act is having also a component related to research, but also can support the manufacturing capacities for nuclear. And the last but not least, and we have some very recent news about the important project of common European interest, IPCIs, dedicated to nuclear. So we had at the beginning of April the approval or the start of developing those IPCIs dedicated to nuclear. This is a form of state aid, and it's meant to help innovation research up to the to reaching the demonstrator level. So it's not meant to help during the deployment. So I was providing some information about the different, let's say, public funds or public opportunities for innovation, but not only, also for deployment. And it was said those public funds would help de-risking and unlocking also private funds, because private investors will be also, if we are having access to the public funds, the public investors will be incentivized to invest in innovation, research, development, and later on in the deployment of the new fleet. So I think that's more or less it from my side.
Thank you very much. It has been really interesting.
Hello, my name is Cornelia, and today I am representing Women in Nuclear Poland. As maybe most of you know, this is a chapter of an international organization that brings together the women who are working across the nuclear sector, from the research, through business, industry, policy making, and our mission is to support gender balance and promote nuclear science and technology, and also to empower women to take leadership roles in the industry. I am very happy that here among the panelists and the moderators, there are 2 other WIN members, and I'm also very happy to see my fellow members from Poland here. Thank you. On a daily basis, I work at Orlen Synthos Green Energy. This is a company that was established to implement and deploy a fleet of BWRX-300 SMRs in GE Hitachi's technology, to make a significant step towards Poland's decarbonization. We are very fortunate today to have such an accomplished group of professionals, each of you bringing your own perspective on the complexities of financing nuclear projects. But before we dive deep into mechanisms and instruments, it's very important to remember that any financial structure does not exist in a vacuum. It's the whole environment. And at the heart of every successful nuclear project, there is a foundation built of trust and credibility. This is what Jimena was talking about. On a daily basis, I work at communications department, and I am also a part of the team that deals with stakeholder engagement. Building credibility for SMR projects is key to attract investment, financing, and to reduce risk. And the key success is early stakeholder engagement. Because if you don't engage the key stakeholders at the very beginning, even if the financing plan is perfect, it will fall apart. And it's very important to engage the investors, the regulators, the supply chain, and also the state. When I refer to the state, I mean politicians of all levels, from the village heads, the mayors, the local governments, through MPs to relevant ministries and the government itself. As we see, we have a member of the government, so it's very important. The knowledge about the energy transition and the will to have the real energy transition should be over the election term and cross-party, because operational SMRs and nuclear in general is essential for the energy transition of Poland and I think many other countries in the world. But SMRs are flexible, scalable, they offer decarbonization potential, especially in industrial applications such as ours at OSGE, and also they offer the potential for the off-grid, as I'm sorry, I don't remember, but some of previous speakers mentioned. However, the quality and the safety of the technology does not guarantee financing. The investors are looking not only on the return on investment, but they are also looking for credibility. And the credibility, I mean, not only in terms of technology, regulations, but also in terms of the society. So I would like to highlight this key but often underestimated factor, that building trust and credibility for SMR projects could be a strategy to attract financing and to reduce all the risks. So if an investor looks at the project, the key risk is financial, because as we all know, the loans aren't for free. And if the project isn't delivered on time and within the budget, we start losing money just immediately. So first, because the plant isn't generating electricity, and second, because the cost of capital continues to accumulate. And to illustrate this just a little, my associate, who's a nuclear professor, made a small calculation for me, referring to current electricity prices in Poland. And 1 unit of a BWRX 300 SMR is expected to produce around 2.3 terawatt hours a year. So this is about 200 gigawatt hours per month. So if we refer to current energy prices, 1 month of delay is around 29 million euros in lost revenue. So also we need to refer to the construction timeline in the construction phase. Any delays adds costs. So this is clear that timeline certainty and budget discipline are not project metrics, but they are the foundation of projects' financial viability. Strategies for building credibility for a nuclear project help to obtain financing. This is clear as that. Early stakeholder engagement is what we do at OSGE, because as we know, there's the saying, well begun is half done. So we run transparent consultations at all stages with the local communities. We work together with the industry, the academia, and local authorities to demonstrate the support. And we also do the strategic communication around the technology. We are changing the narrative from, oh, SMRs, unproven technology, SMRs are like Yeti, everyone has heard of them, no one has seen them. So we are changing this to explaining people that X stands for the 10th generation of boiling water reactor in GE Hitachi's technology. And this is why this 300 megawatt SMR is called the BWRX 300. We also speak the language of benefits. We talk about jobs, we talk about grid stability, about emission-free baseload power, and about the flexibility of power supply. According to KPMG's report, use of BWRX 300 technology in Poland benefits for economy and local government. In data per unit, if we talk about job places, during the construction phase, 1 unit of BWRX 300 SMR brings about 2,700 job places a year, and in the operational phase, it is 700 job places. To explain, it is not 700 on site at the NPP, but it's also around the site. I think we have to say that such an investment brings the development of the whole society, of the whole local economy. I mean, the services, the restaurants, the taxi drivers, the shops, everything. And then, as I said, we speak about emission reductions. It is less CO2, less SOx, less NOx, less dust. And these are huge numbers if you compare it to 60 years of operation of a plant. And then we have the grid stability and the high potential for such a power plant to cooperate with the renewables. And as many of you probably know, we have a lot of renewables operating in Poland, and we are still, as a country, investing in renewables. And last but not least, we speak about security. And it's not only energy security, but it's security of a defensive nature, because distributed energy systems are more secure than concentrated energy systems. And also, as we know, in 2022, a full-scale war in the Ukraine began. And of course, the NPP in Zaporozhye is being occupied by the Russians. There were some dangerous situations, but still it wasn't destroyed. Yeah? And comparing to other situations, if we only mention the Nowa Kachowka hydrogenic dam, it has been destroyed with terrible impact for the environment, for the people, and everything. To sum up, SMR BWRX 300 technology has earned and continues to earn the trust of multiple stakeholders, investors, regulators, governments, and the public. I think that projects that proactively build credibility at all of these fronts have a better chance of securing financing, mitigating the risks, and achieving a long-term success from the construction phase to the operational phase. To make a short conclusion, I think that credibility has become one of the most valuable currencies in nuclear projects financing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So yeah, a little bit great what we have learned. Before we open the floor for Q&A session, I mean, maybe a few thoughts which are quite interesting from our perspective, from the European Commission. What the financing is providing for the nuclear is providing the long-term stability. I mean, most of the nuclear power plants, they are producing the electricity for 60 years. They were designed for 60 years. I mean, now doing research for 8 years. So basically, there is a guarantee of a cash inflow for 60, 80 years. From the investment point of view, it's absolutely amazing. I mean, we have a few pioneering projects even to extend the nuclear power plants for 100 years. So that's the one thing for consideration. Another one, basically, we are quite predictable concerning the revenue. I mean, we created, or there is a regulation for financial instruments which provides the contract for difference, which stabilize the prices. And stabilization of prices is about 30, 35 years. I mean, the best example is from United Kingdom, which basically introduced the CDF for 35 years with a fixed price of electricity, which is example which was developed in Europe, thanks to our French colleagues. A very strong economic fundamentals. Basically, when you look to the nuclear production and the nuclear electricity production, we have a high capacity factors, about 95%. Which is not comparable with the wind, 35%, or solar. So in terms of capacity factor, there is nothing better than nuclear. Inflation hedge. I mean, you're a hedge manager, or if you're a portfolio manager, I mean, there is nothing better than the inflation hedge through nuclear investment. Because basically, electricity prices are typically correlated with inflation. We talked a little bit about the contract of difference, so we know more or less how it works. Diversification of a portfolio. I mean, once again, I mean, if you like to diversify your portfolio investment in the current assets or in energy, I mean, this is fantastic because you can diversify for nuclear, taking into account the solar, wind, and conventional sources. Regulatory support, I mean, through introduction of Minister and Michel, I mean, we know that there's a full support of nuclear right now from OECD, from European Commission, and from the member states. And we have also the economic multiplier effect, so basically the jobs, infrastructure, and supply chain. Coming back to the few points which was raised, especially from Ximena, I mean, what kind of projects to invest? Of course, research projects. There's nothing better than the human capital investment and the research investment. So once again, Euratom research projects, there's nothing better which guarantee you the quick and clean and sustainable return on investment. And as a one and last comment, I'm always trying to give an example of a Polish electricity plant, which is 120 years old. So can you imagine 120 years of constant cash flow? That's the hydropower. It's not yet nuclear. It's maybe the oldest one, maybe the smallest one, but it's the newest one because they are just refurbished it. So with a little bit of refurbishment, you can create amazing vehicle which generates you the cash inflow. I will finish here. We open the floor for a discussion for Q&A. So floor is yours now. Thank you very much for coming and thank you very much for being here. And if you would like to introduce yourself, ask the question, target one of us, and then we will see who will reply. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for these inspiring talks and thoughts. I mean, I am from the technological side. I am Abdul Al-Mazouzi from EDF and SNETP. So I am from the technological side, not from the finance. And today, in this conference, we were talking a lot about technology, how we can improve and how we can, but we are improving too many technologies. And we are talking only about one market. It is the European market, right? So what is your advice for the technological guys like me? Is to focus on a specific technology or just to work in any technology and wait for you to decide which technology is the best for the country? what could be the approach? Because we cannot, we do not have we do not have, basically in Europe, we do not have, I would say, the critical mass to work in all technologies that exist. So today we are talking about 80 designs in the world. Which one is going to be built in Europe? We do not know yet. We have no contract at this moment. Are we just wasting our time in developing many things? Or are we focusing, it was said, focusing on specific technologies that are of benefit for all of us, for our friends, houses, whatsoever. So I do not know, but it is for you, Mr. Minister.
Thank you, and I'm happy to answer this question. And but actually, I will reply to this question in the following way. I mean, first, and try to draw your attention to at least two things. And first is what Poland on any other country can do when it comes to selection and deployment of different nuclear technologies. The second is my general comment about how the market could look like in the future. So first, for Poland, and it's also typical because we are a nuclear newcomer, it's rather difficult to envisage that in the coming years we're gonna develop and deploy, I don't know, several projects with different technologies. We're not going to make it because it's technically not possible. And I remember, and let me quote this. I was invited to a conference probably 2 years ago when I was still in my capacity of a legal expert. And then the moderator has asked, we're in a very great position because you are currently developing large-scale nuclear. At that time, we've been developing the AP1000. Then there was a Korean technology being developed in parallel, so another large scale. We had a decision in principle issued for New World, for X300, for NuScale. So we had 4 SMRs project to large scale. And I replied to this very enthusiastic question, no, we are not in a good position. Because saying that as a nuclear newcomer gonna develop 7 different technologies in parallel is making us ridiculous. Here I will answer that countries like Poland, especially countries like Poland, needs to decide quite quickly what technologies we would say develop, support, and follow, because our regulator will not be able in a position to license them all, and it's then not possible to develop them. And then my second thought on this is that, especially if we are discussing SMRs, I know there are many different, you quoted about 80 projects that are now being developed. I say that the main advantage, one of the main advantages of the SMR is that they can create a standard design and they make these projects replicable and apply it in the different member states and make the advantages of the economy of the scale. It's maybe difficult to say it, but if we want to succeed also in this part of the market, we cannot have 80 technologies. We need to end up with only a couple of them, because then we lose from our side these advantages of the standardization, cost going down, and the economy of scale. And who will then win this race? I believe that the technologies that will be the most advanced to be implemented, that are the most effective, they're gonna win this race. And I'm not gonna tell you the names here, but we probably all know that we can list only a couple of them that at this stage are technologies that can be treated as a one that can be realistic implemented in the coming years. So Poland, also replying to your questions in another way, is now developing a part of the large-scale program for the small-scale reactors. As a government, we need to also, let's say, remain technology neutral, give place to the competition, and apply fair rules when it comes to the selection of a technology that will be supported. We should do that, and we will do that. But as I said, we will be trying to work with all the technologies that are mature enough for the deployment, and then select probably I don't know, 1, 2 of them to work further, because otherwise we will not be able to succeed. And one important thing maybe to add at the end, we believe that because why are we developing Polish nuclear program? Especially with the large scale, the objective is very clear. This is the security of supply. We want to have low emission, dispatchable capacity that can guarantee our energy demands. But there is another feature, especially if we have decided to put billions of public money into the program. We want nuclear to be an important part of the Polish economic ecosystem. We want that Polish, and you have mentioned supply chain. We have a lot of companies that are well experienced in the construction sector. Over the last years here in Poland, we have constructed thousands of kilometers of highways, new stadiums, bridges. So we have the construction capacity and know-how, but we lack nuclear. We believe that if we develop the sector, if we develop nuclear projects, these Polish companies can be engaged as suppliers, learn, gain the capacity to work in this global nuclear business, and then expand worldwide. So here, yes, the intention is also to engage the Polish sector and Polish companies as much as possible. And for that, we also need to create very stable framework and very well-defined objectives, because for the business, especially if they need to invest, nuclear is very specific. You need to keep the safety standards. Very often it requires a lot of costly certificates to be delivered. So yes, we want to give you a very clear signal, what we do, how we do, what we support, when we support, and then I believe it will be an answer with who the supply chain should work.
Thank you very much. It has been really interesting. We need to move forward to be able to hear other people's question. Please don't forget to state your name and who are you directing the question, please?
No problem. Michael Futterer from the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. I have a question to Michel Barthélémy. Now, decision makers often base their decisions on an LCOE approach, right? Now, we have for many years talked about level playing fields for comparison between different energy sources, and what we have heard in the last few years also, but in the last few days here at the conference, these were just huge numbers of costs that make at least my head spin. Now, I was very pleased to hear that you, as a panel, you have integrated a lot. You have spoken about value, not only about cost. And my question to you, Michel, is how can one integrate these non-monetary values like energy independence and so on into an assessment that I can take to my bank and ask for investment? Thank you.
Well, that's very good, but also a very difficult question, because if I had the answer, probably I wouldn't be here and I would be going around giving people the magic formula so that they can make the case for nuclear. And the truth is that it's very easy to do the LCOE. And and that's why people love it. And there is of course value in doing the levelized cost of electricity. It's an important metric. It allows a quick comparison across technologies. It is well understood. So if I'm a banker, that's what I would look at first. And this was actually the right approach until we started to introduce variable renewables, because the cost and the value were somewhat aligned. With variable renewables, as we know, things don't work the same way. You have need for backup. You need to have need for reinforcing the grid. You have all these costs above plant level LCOE that needs to be taken into account. The additional challenge is that also these costs are not necessarily going to be borne by the technology that is being deployed. So if I'm, a solar farm in the north of Poland, and I create this cost for the entire system, the electricity market are not going to bring this cost back to me directly. So that's really one of the key challenges. So one thing we've done at the NEA, and I'm sure you're familiar with that, is to develop what we call system cost studies. And we did it a few years ago, and at the time it was quite generic, but it demonstrated the key points, that this system cost of electricity start to become significant once we reach a certain percentage of variable renewables. One thing we've learned in doing these studies is that, of course, this system costs very much depend on your national electricity mix, your national resources. If you're a country that is blessed with a lot of interconnection or hydropower, of course, the system costs are not going to be the same, because your ability to manage variable renewables would be much easier than if you're a tiny island with in a cold climate. So we're getting there. We've been working at the moment with Sweden to do a system cost study with them. We're working with other countries. We'd love to do a system cost study for Poland. It takes a village, I would say, to use a well-quoted phrase, to bring this point to the policymakers, and I think the policymakers now get it. And next to the bankers. So there we do rely on our dear colleague on the left, who does a lot of the heavy lift at the moment, doing this kind of education with bankers on what is nuclear, what are the risks, but also what is the value, and why, when you take into account system cost of electricity, there's tremendous value for nuclear energy.
Thank you very much. I think we have another panelist that wants to have a
I want to intervene here because, I would like to talk about the situation at EU level. And indeed, we were looking at this report about system cost. It was like a Bible for us because it's very important. And it's coming also because we hear that nuclear is very expensive. And when we are comparing with renewables, which are very, very cheap. Well, indeed, if we are taking into account other things that are needed, like, for example, we have this initiative or this process of improving the networks, and it's a huge investment that will follow. Definitely, this is one of the reasons why we did it. It's because of variable renewables, as it was said, but those costs are not reflected in the renewables. So the comparison, it's very complicated, and not to say that. And we are coming back to the market, electricity market or energy market, and how is valuing that energy market, like, for example, security of supply. I will not get into details about cases that were happening recently in some countries where it's about security of supply. And so, yes, a good comparison, and this is actually what I was saying about technology neutrality, to consider it in the right way, all the technologies. Thanks.
If I only make one comment on this, so there are also here two issues. The first is how we calculate all this costs you have mentioned, and the other thing is what we do in terms of policy making to allow them to be assessed, or how do we regulate the system. I give you a very clear example. In the electricity only market logic we're working, we have the logic of the scarcity pricing. So basically, the idea is that if we don't have enough supply to meet the demand, then the cost of electricity should go down, and at a certain point in time attain the value of loss load. Which for Poland is at the level of 80,000 Polish zlotys per megawatt hour, 20,000 euros. And basically, in this logic, the market should work in a way that even the sources that can guarantee the security of supply that are dispatchable, like gas-fired power plants, but because of the market and large penetration of renewables in the system, they work only for the limited number of hours. Through the scarcity pricing, they can get enough income to guarantee the profitability of the business. But this model does not work. So we basically theoretically know how to price it, but even if we know it and we basically introduce this model, it does not work. So we need to remedy to this.
Zbigniew Krysiak, Warsaw School of Economics. So there is some indicator used quite widely, which is a return on energy investment. So from that measure, we know that comparing, the photovoltaic wind farms, coal power plants, gas power plants, and nuclear power plants, so the return on energy investment for photovoltaic, you have a 3. For wind farms, almost the same. For coal and the gas, you have around 20 to 30. And for the nuclear power plants, you have from 70 up to 200. So from the economy, it's very important that basically this return is giving added value. And this seems to be forgotten. So this would be as well in context of these questions and the current questions. And my issue which I am raising, the case in Spain, the blackout, if somebody can't calculate the cost of that, and if we have a not appropriate mix of sources, production sources. So these cases, like in Spain, can bring quite much cost, which were not assumed on the beginning, or which were not considered in any, evaluation of the power plant, nuclear power, or general our different projects. So, but my main issue is that a point which is related to return on energy investment. And I think you have some point of view on that. I would be very, happy to have, respond probably from all of you, but as well, especially for Ximena and Michael or Michal.
As you wish, Michel.
Thank you very much for the question. In fact, I must say that as a lawyer, I would look at my colleagues who are economists to talk about that. Definitely discussing with the banks, those are the kinds of issues and the LTOE that are of most interest for them in order to ensure the bankability of the project. But now I would let Michel answer.
What you said fits very much into the point that we need to think about system cost, and when we take that into account, that of course goes just beyond electricity provision. It also is very much inclusive of security of supply. So maybe to go on the Spanish example, which people have been quite cautious to draw a definite conclusion at this point. And whilst I think we need to give time to NSREG to go and do the homework to look at what was the root cause to the blackout. One thing I think we could say with reasonable certainty is that if the electricity mix of France would have been the same as Spain at the time where the blackout would have started in Spain, the blackout would have probably propagated to the whole of Europe. And that's really illustrates the point that nuclear contributes to security of energy supply. And of course, this is not something that markets can in any ways value. So then it goes really to the policymakers to set policies, to set regulation, so that eventually market players act in such a way that these attributes are taken into account when investment decisions are being made.
Thank you very much for the kind words for the Spanish market. Maybe European wants to add something?
Thank you very much. It's a fantastic question, and we really think about it. Well, we call it a bit differently. We call it the capacity factor, high capacity market factor, which is 95%. But this is exactly what the professor said. And there is nothing better than nuclear, honestly speaking. I mean, the solar and wind is not even in the league because they are about 35–20%. So that's why we invest quite a lot in the long-term operations. Because with a relatively low investment upfront, we have a 20 years extension of security of energy supply, which is sustainable, clean, and financially viable. So when we look at France, and when you compare it with Spain and some other member states, I mean, you can clearly see the impact of this indicator. Thank you.
Yes, Vincent Schrijvers, Belgian Nuclear Research Center, CKCN. We've been discussing there's a quite large number of new designs coming up to 80, 70, 80, something like that. Some of those are generation 3, other are generation 4. But when we are looking at what is the potential response or interest from the market, most investors or industrial consumers are quite afraid of the first-of-a-kind effect. They might be very interested in an end-of-a-kind installation where most of the construction risk is managed. But this first-of-a-kind construction risk is still putting off quite a lot of investors. And I was wondering if the governments, the European Commission, the European Union, or any other institution might be able to manage to some degree this first-of-a-kind aspect. Because going through this first-of-a-kind, we're also allowed to learn, to optimize the learning curve and to start learning about how to do with that, how to deal with that. We'll also be able to train the supply chain, to make sure that there is a supply chain which is available for that. But so I was wondering, are there any tools from the governments, from the European Commission, etc.? And maybe related to that is, how does this link with the state support scheme? Is this something which would be allowable under the state support, where you would be financing the first unit, but not the end of a kind, etc.? So I'm kind of wondering, maybe Jimena might be able to answer that, or maybe some other panelists might be able to answer, provide some insights on that. Thank you.
Maybe I can start with that. Definitely everybody's scared of bearing the risk of the first of a kind. And definitely we have discussed about this at multiple occasions, and the private sector says we will not get into it without any government support. Because in fact, today, the private sector, the major risks that they have in mind is phase out, because in Europe it happened. So they're scared that it happens again, so you can repeat that climate change, energy security, you know, but still, I mean, they're like, okay, but we want government involved just to make sure that this is going. So for the first of a kind, there will need to be an approach, a public-private partnership, even though potentially it may be an off-grid project. But the idea, I think, for the future, I mean, that's maybe me dreaming a little bit too much, but for at least at a certain level, all small modular reactors, I don't say that the large ones will be, but it's that in the future, this could be project finance and be more on a B2B approach, business-to-business approach. But to get there, we need to build trust with the stakeholders. And so, yes, at the beginning, there will definitely need to be some kind of state support. So I think that that will depend on the different countries. We're discussing it at the Industrial Alliance to see at the EU level how we're going to potentially do that. Yeah, we will need to see. I mean, and again, I think that it will depend on the risk of the project. So, talking about microreactor, the risk is less. So maybe there can be less government support. But when the risk gets larger, because the risk is, again, it's construction phase, so either it's installation or construction. The banks afterwards, they look about safety, but for that, they completely rely, they will have to rely on the safety authority, because usually when, I don't know if some of you have done project finance in other sectors, but they always have an army, you know, the banks have an army of consultants, including the lender's technical consultants. But for nuclear, yes, I mean, they certainly will have consultants, but they will not be able to get, I mean, given the complexity of the technology, they will have to rely on the safety authority completely. Then there is the waste, and that's another thing that will help the development, the deployment of large or small modular reactors, is what are we going to do with the waste? And you're talking about different types of generation. It's true that some type of waste, we will need to study how they're going to be stored, because it's not going to be the same type of waste. I mean, I've discussed about waste with waste management organizations who would like to be involved in the discussion right now, and the banks want to know what are you going to do with the waste. And so it's true that we also will need to be thinking about potentially a regional DGR for Europe, because some countries just don't have either the finance capacity or the space to have that kind of installation.
And maybe if I can only short comment, agreeing with all that was said, one additional thing. The first of a kind, next of a kind is a sort of a theoretical concept. Of course, it has very practical implications. We know how to define it. But then, basically, this concept relates to the design and construction phase. Then this phase consists of, as I said, the design and construction. And let's take the example, if we design the reactor, we license it in one country, we build it, but then we freeze construction of another for 10 years. The design is there, it was licensed, so the regulator has gone through all the process. We have even constructed it successfully, but then the whole supply chain is gone. By 10 years, we should restart the project practically from scratch. Is it then first of a kind or next of a kind? Yeah? I would say it's not first of a kind, but it's not also not the first of a kind. So in order to think about really next of a kind, and all the advantages of replicating the work, the supply chain, we need to have this project, you know, developing, not one, not two, many of them. So that's something to think about as well.
Well, thank you very much. Any other question from the audience?
Sorry, I wanted to make a comment.
Please, go ahead.
Because we were talking about innovative technologies, and we see that in other parts of the world there are some examples of big tech investing in technologies, also advanced one. So, well, discussing with Ximena is not about first of a kind, but it's about, it is not about the project, yes, it's about the technology. But it's how to say, it's mitigating the risk of the technology and...
Sorry. Again, case-by-case basis, what are we talking about? Because it's true that, as you were saying, I mean, first of a kind, when you have small modular reactors that are a mini version of already existing large reactor, so what could be considered exactly of a first of a kind or not? Don't know.
Hello, I am Martin Sierra. I come from the Nuclear Engineering Master from Spain, and I would like to address this question to Ximena. We have seen an increasing interest for cogeneration in the nuclear power plants as a way to improve the efficiency and the income. But even though Westinghouse, some companies like Westinghouse have these technologies for cogeneration of hydrogen, desalination, bioreactors, let's say, almost no new constructions are looking to adapt these technologies to the new power plants. So how can we raise financing and interest for cogeneration to these new constructions?
The interest is there. No, the thing is that looking at the future, okay, yeah, I'm a pro-nuclear, definitely. So we're going to need nuclear in the energy mix. I mean, that is, I think, no question about it, no doubt about it. I think that we still need, because I'm talking with end users in the group, and I think that there still need to be a lot of communication about what nuclear can bring to other industries. I was at the Water Summit conference in Paris on, my God, week's flight. No, Monday. It was just this Monday. And trying to talk with the desalination guys saying, nuclear reactors, nuclear what? So we need to start talking with others. And that's what we try to do. Well, in the Industrial Alliance, there is a group, but also in my group of the World Nuclear Association. And again, because of the bad publicity, let's say, of nuclear, some industries are looking at it very discreetly. They just don't want it to be public. And so it's very difficult to catch their attention and to inform them about nuclear. The only ones that have really talked about it loudly in the press have been the big tech, because definitely they cannot do without it. But there is a need of small modular reactors. There is a need of projects. And that's also why, I mean, if the banks get interested in something, it's because they know there is going to be a business behind it, you know. But the thing is that we need to start openly speaking about it. And there are very few, in fact, industrial energy-intensive industries that are currently openly speaking about it. Where there was this conference at the CEFIC. No, not the CEFIC. Yeah, but CEFIC is the chemical. No, there was this big conference where you have CEPI. Yeah, where there was this. There was a lot of energy-intensive industries that sort of supported nuclear energy, but we're just starting. This happened like a month or two ago. So we need to talk about it much more, in fact. But But there is a movement, there is an interest. And when you have that, then we're going to be able to discuss about financing, because the banks need to see where the money is going.
If I will do it, because you mentioned the alliance, so industrial application, technical working group 1, right now is looking at the specific needs of the different industries. So this is what we, so beside informing them about capabilities, we are going a little bit further, and we are trying to match the exact needs. And there are industries, so chemical, paper and pulp.
I would like just quickly refer to what Jimena just said about energy-intensive companies looking towards nuclear. As I briefly mentioned at the beginning of my speech, I work at Orlen Synthos Green Energy, and the company is a JV between Orlen, the biggest Polish multi-energy company, and the MS Galeon Group, owned by Mr. Michał Sołowow. And the group consists of many various companies from very different sectors, and most of them are energy intensive. There is also some retail in the group, of course, but these are wooden floors manufacturers. Tiles and ceramic ware, it's very energy intensive. The company from our group that produces ceramic ware is called Cersanit, and nowadays the cost, the biggest cost of the company, monthly or yearly, doesn't matter, is the energy, and it's about 23 or 25%, I don't remember right now so exactly. And what's more, it was about 3 to 5% just 10 years ago. So this is why companies like our mother companies look towards the nuclear so much. And I think it's the trend, and it's going to be even more popular and often.
Like, I just want to add also, because it's something that came up in the press this week. You know, I don't know if you read the Financial Times. There is an article about how chemical industries want to leave Europe because of the energy price. I mean, we definitely need nuclear. It's not only, let's say, for energy, for consumption, for our phones, for our energy intensive is important, and as a big community of countries, we're talking about reindustrializing Europe. We're talking also about, you know, military, let's say, developments. We need energy for all that. So it's a real strategic and survival issue here, that we need to have nuclear in order to be able to do all that. And so the need is really there. So we just all need now to put our heads together and to think how we can finance this.
Well, thank you very much. I'm going to have to take the chance that I have the mic in my hands to ask, because in this regard, I would like to know how the NEA and other depositories of liability conventions are going to allow operators that are not strictly nuclear operators to operate a microreactor, and how are they going to channel that? And this question is directly to any of the panelists that would like to answer.
You should really look for the answer from the person that has been the guardian of that instrument for many years.
No, I mean, sorry, this is a very legal topic. So who is the operator under the international conventions discussing nuclear liability, so the compensation in case of nuclear damage? So in fact, under the conventions, the definition is very broad, because it's any entity that is designated as such by the relevant national authority, which means that it might not be only the licensee. It could be, and it has happened in the past, but legislation has changed, where you can have a mother company that be considered also an operator, and therefore bearing the nuclear liability, so the needs to compensate third parties in case of a nuclear accident, or you can have another entity. So it will depend, in fact, on what the relevant authority will decide. However, it's true that in principle, it is always the licensee, the operator. But it has been seen in the past, especially if we're talking about project finance. And again, as I was saying, I mean, this is risk allocation. These are the banks looking to get, the reimbursement. They need to know who is going to bear. This is one, I mean, nuclear liability is one of the biggest risks if there is a problem. Even though we're proud to say that we're working very theoretically here because, again, we have only had very few accidents in 70 years. But definitely this is something that the banks will be looking into.
Thank you very much. This is very optimistic. We have a return of investment of 1 minute and 30 seconds. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for all the panelists to accept our invitation and being so thoughtful about the subject. We close the session and we are here, so if you have any additional comments, please contact us. Thank you so much.